Good evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, staff. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting for the Town of Pelham Council for Monday, October 16th, 2017, to order. Before we begin our agenda, I think it would be appropriate that we have a special moment of silence for Doug Burr. Doug Burr, as council colleagues will know, recently passed away. He had cancer, and his funeral service was just on Saturday. He was a founding member of the Fonthill and District Rotary Club. He was the past president, a Paul Harris Fellow. Yeah. I first met Mr. Burr in my capacity as mayor when I was shortly after being elected in 2006, and he invited me to come to the Tim Hortons just over here near Town Hall at that point and sit down and talk about, what do you think we talked about? The importance of a community center. I think he talked about doubling the arena, twinning the arena. We have to do it. So he was an ardent supporter of that. Council colleagues will recall through the years we received many items of correspondence from Mr. Burr. He would travel to various parts of Ontario or North America and come back with articles, or he'd come back with items from those areas and say, well, we need this in Pelham. We need this in Pelham. He would often drop off gifts like this, one of these hockey sticks from Tim Hortons with a little note on it saying, we need this community center, we need an arena in Pelham. Very, very ardent and adamant supporter. But he was also a well-known businessman in the community, very generous to many, many sporting teams. I know that he sponsored a number of hockey clubs, teams, but also went into soccer. And very, very well-known and well-liked through the community. And it was a beautiful service. I know Councillor Papp and Councillor Durley were there, as were members of staff. So I think it's appropriate that we, especially with something on the agenda this evening for Rotary, that we take a few moments and remember Doug Burr. Thank you, colleagues. Now I would ask all who are able to rise, and Councillor Papp to lead us in the sing of our national anthem.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patron of, in all thy Son's command, with glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Councillor Papp. Been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor King. Be it resolved that the agenda for the October 16th, 2017 regular meeting of council be adopted. Are there any changes to the agenda? Council colleagues, I wonder if I might have a motion to move up item 9.4.1, which is under consent, which is the proclamation for World Polio Eradication Day, and move it up to immediately following the delegation from Mr. Snack, the Rotary Club. So moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak. So that's 9.4.1. Any questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. And I note that we are to have a presentation from Colliers International. So it doesn't appear that the individual's here yet. So we'll have to be flexible with that. Any other changes? There being none, I'm going to call the question on the agenda as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. The next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. That is any conflicts of interest that councillors may have. Do any members have any conflicts?
None, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. There are none. So can that be noted? I do not have any either. So we already have, thank you. We'll now move on to presentations and delegations. We already have Mr. Wilson, but he's not here yet. So let's proceed to delegations. I do see that some members of, let's get the Rotary.
There he is.
Come on in.
I was told to wait outside, so I've been waiting outside.
Okay. Are you ready to proceed or, yes? Okay. Please come on in.
Evening, councillors, mayor. How's everybody?
Good. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming and presenting to us.
So I'm here to summarize the marketing efforts and the listing for the town lands.
Perfect.
At the moment, I'm just going to get my glasses on here. So we've now signed the listing, and it's for the entire 18 acres of land. The parcel of 12.5 acres at the front and the 5.55 at the rear for $13.9 million. We're on the local real estate board, and we're on the Toronto Real Estate Board as well. At the moment, we have about 7 groups, so lots of interest out of the gates, really quick. Some Toronto, some regional, some local. We don't know where it's all going to end up, but that's, at the very beginning, that's pretty good showing. We have signage ordered. We're going to do 5 signs spread throughout the property. An 8x16 at the corner by the pond, like shooting onto Rice Road, and then a sprinkling of 8x8s around the balance. Jeremiah Seamus, who was with us last time, he's working on the full package, the big glossy brochure, the marketing piece that's going to go to everybody. And then at the moment, Todd and I are working with the local information with Teresa and with Darren to put the full package together. So we're just assembling bits and pieces at the moment. It's a bit of a process, as you could tell. The marketing piece is quite extensive. So, we've had a lot of calls from various people, so I'm encouraging all the councillors to just keep sending them my way. I'll deal with them. That's why you've hired me to sift and sort and vet and make sure we've got the right people that are interested in the property. The medical building we're dealing with as well, so we're just waiting to see how that's all going to play out. At the moment, they want to be on Highway 20, and so we'll just see where that all ends up at the moment. We're trying to get them off Highway 20 into the lands that we have for sale, and that's it's essentially work in progress.
Okay.
So I'm here to answer any questions, but we're off to a full start, and I've got 2 folks behind me and a whole team up in Toronto that's putting things together. We're answering calls. We're answering as much as we can and just letting people know that just be patient. We'll have the package as soon as we can.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Wilson, you had, there's a timeline, is there not, that you're,
Yes.
maybe just fill us in on what that process looks like, and then I'll open it up to questions from members of council.
So what we decided to do in this case is have a bid date, and that is December 8th, which is a Friday. So we'll get to the market in the next 2 weeks, which will give a buyer essentially 5 to 6 weeks to meet with the town, review the proposal, check out the zoning, deal with their tenants if they have any tenants, and kind of get all their ducks in a row, so to speak.
Okay,
That's typically how you do a large project like this. You have a bid date, so people have a lot of pre-due diligence, so they can review zoning, traffic studies, environmental, geotechnical, archaeological, all at once, ahead of time. And then I'm sure they'll be knocking on the door of the town to come and ask about permitted uses and zoning densities and coverage and that type of thing, so.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Wonder if council colleagues have any questions for Mr. Wilson? Councillor Papp?
Very quickly, thanks, Mr. Wilson. Great start. I guess the 7 potential buyers, investors, can you just give me an idea? Are most of them from the GTA, or it's a smattering of both?
Want names, or do you just want?
No, I don't want names.
Not in
geographic?
public.
I don't want to be not in public.
I would say we have 2 Toronto-based,
Right,
4 local,
right.
and 1 Buffalo.
Buffalo. Good.
And then there's a mixture, Senator, or Councillor Papp, of partial
Right.
pieces and
Right.
some entire parcel.
Good. Good.
Now,
Okay,
keep in mind, it hasn't even been in the Globe yet. Like, we're basically gonna be in the Globe and Mail, all of the local papers. And so it hasn't even really hit the market yet. It's hit the real estate market, so real estate people in the GTA and Niagara can
Right.
see it, but typically that's the very beginning.
thank you.
So just quickly, so that I can imagine that once you hit the Globe and Mail, then you'll have across the country. Obviously now it's international as well.
Yes.
You get all kinds of interest. Fascinating. Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Okay, thank you. Any others? Okay. So I just want to underscore, I guess, I mean, I've been getting some calls, and your suggestion is to give it all to you. That's what staff have been saying as well. So is
Here to
that your
manage and
recommendation to
sort,
council?
yeah.
Okay. And if anyone else is out there and knows of it, just give you a call. Perhaps we can make sure that we include that on the website to spread the word on that. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the update. We will be dealing with the bylaw later on in the evening. We don't expect you to stick around till then.
Okay.
But we will be officially declaring the lands surplus. So thanks very much for the
Okay.
update.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Is there no motion? Do we need a motion? Because it's verbal? So it's a verbal update, so normally we may have a motion, but we don't have one in that case. So thank you very much, Mr. Wilson, for your work. Now we move to delegations, and we do have Paul Snack here. He's the president of the Rotary Club of Font Hill to inform us about World Polio Eradication Day. Thank you very much for joining us and for sporting your Rotary hat as well,
This is
as
in
you asked.
honor of Mr. Burr.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, thank you for having me tonight. I appreciate it. On October the 24th, 2017, the Rotary International recognized World Polio Eradication Day around the world. Here in Niagara, on both sides of the border, the various Rotary clubs are hoping to mark this day by lighting up a variety of landmarks in our towns in Rotary blue and yellow lights. Rotary International decided to take on the challenge of eliminating polio around the world back in 1985. We have invested over $3 billion over these years and have inoculated over 2.5 billion people throughout 122 countries. Today, we are down to 8. Yes, only 8 cases of polio today. However, we are not done. To totally eradicate the disease, it has to be polio-free for 3 years around the world. So there's still a challenge ahead of us. And today we will continue to vaccinate people around the globe and will not stop until polio is eliminated totally worldwide. We've had a number of sponsors and partners. Bill Gates, you may have heard, he has invested, I think, close to $1 billion himself through his foundation. But through Rotary and Rotary International, we've raised money and spent, as I said, $3 billion to date. Over the next 3 years, we plan to spend close to $1.2 billion to totally eradicate polio around the world. And it's interesting because people think that polio has disappeared, but it hasn't. And even the slightest indication of the disease can pop back up. And as I said, there were 38 last year, we're down to 8. So we're meeting the challenge. I'm here on behalf of the Rotary Club of Font Hill to ask the town of Pelham for permission to mark this day by officially declaring October 24th as World Polio Eradication Day. As a symbol, on this day, we would like to light up the town arches in Rotary blue and yellow lights. The town of Niagara Falls has received permission to light up Niagara Falls on that day. So we're meeting with all the Rotary clubs in the Niagara region, on both sides of the border at Niagara Falls on the evening of the 24th at 10 o'clock to light up the falls in blue and yellow. The city of St. Catharines will be lighting up the Bourgogne Bridge. Welland is hoping to light up their downtown bridge a couple of days afterwards. Somebody beat us to the punch, I think, on that particular day. Other Niagara towns like Dunnville are going to light up buildings in their downtown areas. We're hoping to light up the Peace Bridge between the U.S. and the Canadian side. So we are hoping that we can count on your support to make this happen in Pelham as well, please. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Let's see if there's any questions or comments from members of council. Council colleagues, Councillor Papp?
Well, as you know, I am also a fellow Rotarian and very proud to be a part of the, so I take it that the proclamation will move towards,
Yes. Yeah.
that we're working all the clubs towards this end, and we'd like to be able to say that, yeah, it's over, and that Rotary International and us locally will focus on other major areas that are of concern to the community. So to Paul and to Frank at the back, it's been long, for many of us who have been in the club for a long time, it's finally, it looks like we've come to the end.
Thank you very much. And just to comment a little bit further, I mean, your club has been
Incredible.
so, yeah, incredible, that is the word, and supportive of so many things in the town, starting from the early days with the Steve Bauer Trail, and then the Crosley, the band uniforms, so many other activities, and involved with the Interact clubs in the high school and the local schools, and council. Mr. Snack was just telling me that they're now working on getting a Interact club in Niagara of all of the clubs, so youth as well getting involved. And you're continuing, you know, you support through the Mudfest and through other initiatives. You support things like the skateboard park, and now you're considering a donation to the community center, which we greatly appreciate. And you're just so supportive in the community. But that's the community. But you're also focused internationally, and it's just outstanding. So kudos to the entire club. We know that, I know that from being there, that you continue to talk about the different things and work on various initiatives that are also international. So this is one of them, and it just shows that by working and almost taking the approach of the tortoise, you know, you just keep working at it, you can literally change the world. So congratulations to your club, to the entire Rotary Club International as well, on eradication of polio in our world. So it has been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Durley. Be it resolved, the council received the presentation by Paul Snack, President, Rotary Club Fonthill, regarding the World Polio Eradication Day, for information. I'm sure there's other things I neglected to mention, the sign we were talking about as well. They're just very involved in the community, so thank you. Going to call a question?
It's a team effort.
Yeah, and you're a great club along with other service clubs in our community. Thank you. Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. I do have a motion now, moved by Councillor Accursi, second by Councillor King. Be it resolved that the Corporation of the Town Pelham does hereby proclaim October 24th, 2017 as World Polio Eradication Day, and that the Pelham arches be lit blue and yellow on October 24th, 2017 in support of World Polio Eradication Day. Any other comments or questions? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. We look forward to that. Thank you very much for your ongoing service in the community and globally as well. Thank you. Thank you. And you don't have to stay till the end of the meeting unless you want to. You're more than welcome to stay. Thank you, gentlemen. And now we have Councillor Beatty with Regional Council Report. Thank you for joining us, Councillor.
Mr. Mayor, members of council and staff, and the gallery. Basically, a number of the committees talk about the preview of the capital budget, and that was dealt with in the capital budget meeting last Thursday evening, and proceeding towards the 2018 budget schedule. I'll just mention a couple of items that are in here that expand on. One that probably came as a surprise to everybody, but it came as a surprise to me in terms of the history related to the councillor expense policy review. If you had asked me prior to a month ago, was there a policy, I would very clearly say yes. Clearly, it's about mileage and things that are related solely to the job and so on. So I was quite surprised to see the standard coverage of the chair saying that there isn't a policy. 14 years of being involved came as quite a surprise. I'm pleased to say that the chair has done, and I gather other people have done, a full freedom of information request to get all of the information that's out there going back several years, to certain that there is no wrongdoing in terms of the nature. And it has been referred to the Corporate Services Committee, which the mayor is a member, for tightening up that policy and having everything, the T's and I's, all taken care of. So it's been a concern, a public concern in terms of the issue. I want to mention over on the public health side, it was a very impassioned group of parents, one of whom was a former staff member of mine, referred to as Mums Stop the Harm, MSTH, and with regard to the opioid crisis. And they put a personal face, each of them lost a child to a drug overdose. And they gave the nature of what a drug abuse issue is. And it's not just something that's frivolous and so on. It's basically, they talked about the comparison of a person who's starving and the basic need for food and water. And in terms of what you would do in that circumstance, and they compared that. But it was very, very touching, probably the most emotional presentation I've seen in my years on council. And we responded very quickly, putting together a very strong action motion to try and proceed with this, what appears to be a growing issue. I want to mention briefly the Niagara EMS Resource Plan. We have benefited, well, two communities have really benefited in the last few years of novel ways of dealing with EMS. One is Wainfleet, and the idea of having full service ambulances for Wainfleet is a matter of numbers that's difficult. So they've got a person basically who is there and travels throughout the community on a service level in terms of not carrying people to medical facilities, but dealing with sort of the treatment side or the pre-treatment side of things. And it's been very, very effective, and it's a model that's been shown across the country as a way of dealing with remote areas. And the Port Colborne, Welland, Pelham area is also served by additional EMS staff in terms of, so we're expanding that. The numbers are staggering in terms of the increasing workload that's happening. The costs are very significant, obviously, every time you add a new ambulance and a new crew, et cetera. And the desire is, I think we're at about a 2/3 level of advanced care paramedics, which can basically provide as much service in contact with the hospital emergency department as it would as a person being there. And so we're looking at, say, about 2/3 of the staff now have this advanced care paramedic, and we're working on continuation to try and improve that number. So it's partly a cost reduction, but it's also maintaining a service level without adding significant numbers of new crews to the ambulance service. And the last one I want to mention, just the verbal update from council. You'll be aware, obviously, from social media, of the presentation made by a citizen of Pelham. And also there was a presentation made with regard to development charges. And there are some members of council, in particular from the city of Welland, who are concerned about implementing, even if it's a phased implementation, the changes to development charges because of the impact it might have on emerging development opportunities that are there. And I think there's some discussion about trying to avoid the implementation for maybe up to 5 years. So we'll see. That's an ongoing story, and we're going to see where that goes in terms of that. So those are my comments on the report that's there, but I'll be willing to answer questions on any other items that we didn't talk about as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Before I open the floor to council colleagues, just a couple of other things. I agree with you in terms of the policy for expenses. It's not, I guess it's officially a policy per se, but it's certainly guidance, and all of staff have to adhere to that. It's a policy for them, guidance for us. I don't know, it's just a cutting of language. So I'm glad we're finally trying to deal with it and did approve an expense policy. It still needs some tightening up. So things like you can expense 2 tickets to an event when really it should just be 1 ticket because there's only one member, you know. So one spouse or friend or whatever shouldn't be able to go as a freebie because the mayor is going or a councilor is going, et cetera. So, so it does need some tightening up, and we had a long discussion with it at Corporate Services last meeting, and we're going to have a long discussion about it again on Wednesday, and that's good. The other one that's interesting, might be interesting to council colleagues, is the Corporate Services Committee. There is an authorization for issuance of debentures on behalf of the Township of West Lincoln. They're building a new municipal facility, 23 million, and I think the debentures for $21 million. Of interest for council, no doubt, is that they are paying for that debenture by increasing taxes last year by 5% and 5% each year for the next 2 years, so 2018, 2019, so a total of 15%. And I think that's only things I'd like to add to what Councillor Beatty said. Are there any questions for Councillor Beatty or myself regarding the update? Councillor Junkin?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Beatty, not on your report, but as you are the town's representative on the NPCA, I've had a few emails concerning the latest round of layoffs at the NPCA. And it hits especially close to Pelham because, as you know, we do have 2 cold water streams with headwaters in the town. And when I see 2 of those people that got laid off were restoration specialists. So if anyone had a cold water stream going through their property, had erosion problems, wanted to get the fish back in it, they would have phoned these restoration specialists and would have had the help of the organization to maybe get the stream straightened around again. What's the with those people gone, will you be outsourcing this, or how do you manage, how do you foresee or look into the future and think the organization will handle this kind of work in the future?
We had an audit done in terms of that particular division. They went through files, background files, etc. And the finding was basically that there's a large amount of time of the year, there really is no productive work that they can do. We're talking about the late fall to early spring time period. And the feeling was, in looking at other conservation authorities, that far more of it was done through outsourcing, working with partners like Trouts Unlimited or Ducks Unlimited, etc. So the desire is not to remove that role, but it's to change the way in which that role would be delivered in terms of staff. And it should mention that while there were layoffs, part of this is a discussion back and forth with the region of Niagara. We have, for the last 10 years, had a memorandum of understanding for certain duties that belong to the region that were assigned to us to carry out on a day-to-day basis. One of them is the Children's Water Festival, a 4 or 5 day event over approximately 5,000 students are brought in, etc. That's really related more to the Public Works Department, okay, but we were outsourced for it. There's a probability that people may be hired by the region, so being on layoff, but may be hired by another employer. The same is true with the Tree and Forest Conservation Bylaw, is that there are 2 employees that were related to that. That bylaw will still be managed, but it may end up at the end of the negotiations with the Planning Department to, again, reside back at the region rather than with the Conservation Authority. Okay. So it is a work in progress. There was a communique that, if you haven't seen it, I'll try and get it to you, a communique put out by our communication specialist in terms of giving some background and explanation, because there's been a lot of truly quite negative and misrepresented information coming out from several parties, one of whom is the head of the union. In fact, we have hired 2 union people as well, so it's a case there's an ebb and flow in terms of the staff. But it's not to get out of the business, it's basically to do it in a more efficient and productive and less costly manner by working with partners.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for clarifying those items. And I believe the memorandum of understanding will be back at Planning and Development Committee on Wednesday as well. There was a number of questions. I asked them at council. It was dealt with there initially, but there were a number of questions that committee still had, and we were running out of time at regional council. So we look forward to that discussion
and the
there
one
as well.
I have about the Tree and Forest Conservation Bylaw, part of the reason for going 10 years ago to the Conservation Authority is that we could deputize individuals who are working on the weekends. Where, 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday is when most of the chainsaws start ripping away, right? Mm-hmm. So I need that clarification. If the 2 individuals go back to be staff at the region, are we still deputizing people who are working in our parks and recreation areas? And I hope that the answer would be yes, because that's when most of the enforcement. You can't do much when you find out on Monday morning that the cutting took place on the weekend.
Right. Okay, thank you. Any further questions for Councillor Beatty? Okay, we look forward to that discussion going forward, and thanks for bringing us up to speed on these issues.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for making me aware of the mayor's breakfast. I found it very informative in terms of changes. I think it gave basically a perspective to the community in terms of there's where we were, here's where we are now, and was very well received.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you. And we look forward to you being part of the volunteer appreciation that's coming up.
I have to
later
get
this
somebody
month.
to chair a meeting.
Okay.
Got a conflict.
All right, thanks very much. I'm going to call the question on receipt of Councillor Beatty's report for information. Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Councillor. We'll see you at the region over the next couple of days. Thank you. Now we move to adoption of minutes. It's been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Kirsty. Be it resolved, the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. Minutes of the special meeting of council on October 2nd, the regular meeting of council of October 2nd, and the special meeting of council on October 10th. Are there any errors or omissions in those minutes? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Now we move to consent agenda items to be considered in block. Are there any items that council would like to lift for separate consideration? Councillor Junkin, please.
Yes, 9.51, please, the Port Robinson Ferry.
Okay, thank you. And can we lift 942? Anything else? Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Kirsty, second by Councillor King. And we've already dealt with 941. So be it resolved, the following consent agenda items be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved as applicable. Presentation of recommendations arising from the Committee of the Whole for council approval, and the motion be it resolved, the council approve the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole meeting of October 2nd, 2017 as presented. And then we also have the minutes of that meeting. We have staff reports of a routine nature. The 2018 budget schedule, be it resolved that the budget schedule be received and approved as presented. Information correspondence items. We have two items now that one has been lifted. The first is Ministry of Municipal Affairs regarding Bill 68, Modernization of Ontario's Municipal Legislation Act 2017. And the motion, be it resolved, the council receive the correspondence from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs respecting confirmation of proclamation dates for sections of Bill 68, the Modernization of Ontario's Municipal Legislation Act 2017 for information. And there's some things that will start effective this top of the year and then others in 2019. And finally, call for nominations. Be it resolved, the council receive correspondence from the Ministry of Citizenship and Immigration regarding the call for nominations for the June Colwood Outstanding Achievement Award for Volunteerism for information. Any comments or questions on any of those items? Look forward to members of the community coming forward at our pre-budget consultation, which will be next Monday at 6:30 here in the chamber. We look forward to suggestions. There being none, I'm going to call the question on those items. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Councillor Junkin, you lifted item 951, the
Yes,
ferry report.
to you,
please.
Mr. Mayor, just more or less for some clarity, I see the region is being asked to continue their funding level of 66.5. Does the Seaway not continue to fund that anymore? Do you know that as a regional representative? Because I thought at first that they funded the whole thing. I wasn't even aware that the region itself put in that amount.
Yeah, thanks very much. I think the Seaway had to fund it for a period of, could it be 25 years, I believe? And that was their initial commitment when the bridge first came down in August of 74.
Yeah.
And then this service started in 75. And then there were additional fits and starts in terms of their ongoing support. It was brought to the attention of the region a couple years ago, as you'll see noted in the report, that the COA had essentially, while still allowing the service to continue, had essentially abdicated their previous responsibility and said, we're not going to fund it anymore. They did fund a number of upgrades, however, trying to be fair to the Seaway. They did fund a number of accessibility upgrades to the service and kind of got it in gold star condition for that particular service, and then said, okay, now we're done. And so the appeal was made from the city of Thorold a couple of years ago to the region to try to pick things up. The city had, I think, done it for 1 year and then said, well, really, this isn't just simply for residents of Port Robinson and Thorold,
Yeah.
but it has a regional impact.
Yeah.
There's a couple of presentations coming up actually at the region on, I guess it's tomorrow morning at Public Works Committee about this and the cycling impact. 6,000 people used it this year for cycling,
Yeah.
et cetera.
Yes, I know I voted a couple of times this last summer just for the novelty,
Yeah.
taking my grandkids out there, and I couldn't believe the number of cyclists that actually use that service.
Yeah.
So I think it certainly is a community asset to keep it going, that's for sure.
Absolutely. That's the request to the region, so we'll see what the region says. And I think the motion was to receive it simply for information and because we're one of the neighboring communities. A lot of people use Port Robinson Road, cycle in from Pelham and vice versa.
Exactly.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right, thanks. So can we take that, that's the motion from Councillor Kersey and Councillor King to receive for information? Can we call the question on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. The next item, the request to repair the curb in front of this drive, specific property on Meadowville. I guess my question is, it says here, the resolution be referred to staff for review. Can we not just refer it to staff to get it done? Mr. CAO or Ms. Clemencio, can we just get it done?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's on the repair list for the contractor who hasn't started yet. That's the information that I gave to Mr. Irafino in July, that it's a contractor repair. And SACO has been awarded the contract repair project in September, and we're waiting for them to start.
Okay, that's great, great news. I wondered if that was the case. So do we still need to even, I guess we should receive this. And can we, Councillor Papp, I see you.
Well, I'd like to receive it, and also that we earmark it in the next month to give us a progress report if in fact they've started the repairs there, because we're going to be into winter pretty soon.
Okay,
It'd be good to just follow up, just if you could note that through you, Mr. Mayor.
so
Mr.
not
C.
just specific to this, but all concrete work, Councillor Papp?
Just to let us know, how it's going, especially, and this one in particular too as well.
Yeah, okay,
Just sort of progress report.
okay, thank you. Councillor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In his letter, Mr. Irafino states in the second paragraph, "Today we have not received any confirmation that the curb is going to be repaired," and yet the director says that he was informed. So, there has to be some clarification here. What's going wrong with communication?
I don't know if the director can help us?
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor, I talked to Mr. Irafino on July 20th, September 25th, and October 10th.
So in fact, he has received confirmation it was going to be done, he just perhaps misunderstood it or missed a memo.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's correct. I contacted him by email, and I contacted his brother directly, actually.
Thank you.
who was in the town.
All right, thank you very much. We appreciate the clarity and the work. Anyone else? Okay, so looks like the resolution is fine the way it is. May I call the question on the resolution, staff to review? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much, and we look forward to perhaps in your CAL report, Ms. Clemencio, you'll give us a little bit of an update on that particular contract for the concrete work at our next meeting. Thank you. Next is my report. Thanks very much, colleagues. Sorry, I'm just switching to the computer here. I apologize. There we go. Very pleased to be part of the unveiling of the new Hillside Cemetery Dowdy Burial Ground sign on the 20th of September. Colleagues will, of course, recall we had a wonderful presentation and tremendous work by Cindy Fishburne about that, who's really cares deeply about the cemetery and to make sure that all of the records are the most accurate, the most up-to-date. And she's done a tremendous amount of work on this particular cemetery and also on, as they call it, Brown's burial ground in Font Hill. And Mike Law was there as well from Kirkpatrick's that donated one of the signs that were three of the signs that are in the new cemetery. So we thank Kirkpatrick's for that, and town staff for their efforts as well. One of the greatest parts of the event was the family, the Dowdy family, thanking members of staff and Ms. Fishburne for this. So congratulations to staff, Ms. Clemencio as well for that. Thank you. Pleased to be part of the home opener for the Junior B Pelham Panthers on the 24th of September. Very hot day, and the ice, the second, the changing of between the periods when they did the ice, they didn't actually put any water down. They just scraped the top because it was so wet. So very pleased to be there as well as for that home opener. It was a pleasure, along with Councillor Kersey and Papp, to attend the Pelham Business Association meeting on the 25th of September at Zest Restaurant. I was delighted to work with members, to lead members through a creative problem-solving session about sort of the vision and the work of the Pelham Business Association. They asked me to do that, and I was very pleased to do that. And it felt like they had a renewed sense of direction, so that was great to hear, and a great turnout as well. Congratulations to the Fenwick firefighters for their century of service. I did speak about this last council meeting, but honored to attend and thank the founding and past and current members of the Fenwick Firefighters Association for a century of dedicated service. That's just tremendous, coming together as a community to be there to help others. And it was a great family event, as you'll see in the photo there. And I know other members of council were there, Councillor Ribiak and Councillor Junkin for sure. Councillor Beatty spoke about the next item, which is the Mayor's Breakfast. I'd like to thank the Chamber of Commerce for organizing that breakfast, and for Councillor Papp and Ribiak and staff for attending, giving a general update on what's occurred in the town, etc. So it was wonderful to do that and review the significant progress in our town over the last year and outline some of Council's plans for the future. I was honored to also participate on that day, October 5th, not participate, to bring greetings at the start of the Rankin Run. I didn't run in the run itself, although I wish I can one of these years. And they raised more than $7,400 to support the Rankin Run, which also supports Wellspring, and Ms. Ann Mantini was there representing Wellspring, and Marianne Edwards representing the Rankin Run. I was very pleased to attend the Lookout Ridge Retirement Community on the 12th of October to hear Jim Summersides. They're doing this event at Lookout. It's very novel. They're asking residents to tell their stories, and they've been doing it since February, a couple of times a month. To do that and talk about their history, an important feature or fact in their past. And they did ask Jim Summersides, and he invited me to attend. It was very, very informative and amazing, the stories that he had talking about his service during the Second World War and that Special Forces unit. Very pleased to attend the installation dinner and welcome Dr. Fearon to Niagara Peninsula as the new President and Vice Chancellor of Brock University. It was a wonderful event at Brock University this past Saturday, and also pleased to help out and attend the annual Rose City Kids Fashion Show to support their amazing outreach program in the city of Welland. That is my report. Unless there's any questions or comments from members of council, I'm going to call the question on receipt, which has been moved by Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor Durley. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. Now we move to presentation consideration of reports, staff reports requiring action. It's been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Kersey. Be it resolved, the council receive the Community Planning and Development Services report, and the recommendation as follows be approved: that the petitioners of the North Pelham Municipal Drain Study are responsible for their proportionate share of the cost to undertake the study in accordance with the Drainage Act requirements as outlined in the report. comments or questions to the matter? Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I read through the report, I was a little bit concerned about some of the statements that were made in the actual report, which sort of indicated that there was a lack of understanding and a lack of clear communication between various parties, and a lack of understanding by the signatories to the petition about the fact that they would incur costs. And so I guess the question I wondered about, and I think I may have found the answer, was how much, what was the cost that was had it been incurred up to May 20th, 15, when the first email from one of the signatories indicating that they want it to be removed. And it looks like in the letter from Smart that it's probably about $35,000. Is that accurate?
Let's hear from the director. Madam Director.
Mr. Mayor, yes, through you, that is correct. At that time, Mr. Morris from K Smart had estimated that they'd already spent approximately $35,000 to date on that work related to the study for the drain.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Drainage Act is not a simple piece of legislation. It's complicated, and it's I think difficult even for people in the groove to deal with. So I think, Mr. Mayor, in terms of fairness, well, I acknowledge that the signatories are responsible for cost. I would like to propose perhaps an amendment that they would only incur costs up to and including the date of the email, which would be $35,000. That would be apportioned between the town and the signatories, as opposed to the $59,000, which is now being, so there's a $24,000 change in the amount of billing that
Okay.
we could put forward, because it appears to me that the signatories wanted to end the process, weren't sure how to end the process, were informed how to, didn't follow through, as many of us often do. So there seemed to be a lot of confusion around there. I'd be willing to put forward that amendment, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor, and see if there's any seconder, and if we could have a roundtable discussion on that.
Okay. Can we, before we accept the amendment, can we know what the, or maybe it doesn't matter, what the amount is? Do you want to know what the appropriate amount would be for them?
Or
Or
if we have it calculated, that'd be helpful.
Queens, might you have that calculated?
Mr. Mayor, through you, in the correspondence from K Smart and Associates, I think in that same letter, it indicated that the cost would be $8,750.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Junkin?
Yes.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councillor, do you want to comment as a seconder?
No, just to add to Councillor Kersey's description of the Drainage Act. If you've ever read it, it is quite a document, and it is quite confusing. And I can see why, once you get tangled up in it, unless you are sat down and have everything explained to you quite clearly, I can see how people can get confused by it. So for that reason, I fully support this amendment.
Okay, thank you. Others? Councillor Papp?
I'd like to keep things as simple as possible, so let me get this clear, Mr. Mayor, through you and
Yep.
to the director. We have paid out $52,640 to do this study, is that correct?
Ms. Weeds?
Mr. Mayor, through you, yes, the town has. And normally, when the project is completed, the costs are then dispersed to the petitioners of the drain. And in this case, the town was one of the petitioners, as well as the Hollingshead Lemons.
Thank you. Councillor?
Okay, so, just so I'm clear through you, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Kersey, so what are you suggesting? It looks like the citizen petitioners they would be on the hook for $13,160, right?
If we went ahead with the motion as
Right,
presented.
so what are you proposing?
I'm
sir?
proposing that it be reduced to $8,750.
And I think,
That dates it back to when
Right.
they sent the first
Right.
email.
So in which case, forgive me, Mr. Mayor, that our portion then would be the roughly,
meaning,
the remaining portion would be picked up by the town, correct? Is that what I'm, sorry for
that would be the
the,
effect. Ms. Weems?
Right.
Mr. Mayor, through you, yes, that would be the case.
okay, I'll just leave it there, okay,
Approximately an additional
right.
$4,000 to $5,000.
Okay.
Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no particular objection to reducing the amount of cost to our residents, but there is a matter of concern that I'd like some clarification on, I think. As I understand it, the Drainage Act provides for a solution to, obviously, drainage problems to be implemented by all the parties who are affected by the problem. And that it is entirely possible for a petition to be drawn up around a problem in which the town, at least theoretically, might not be a petitioner at all, or might not be a party that would be benefited by the outcome of the drainage study. In the circumstances in which the town would not have been a party to it, I'm guessing that there would be no opportunity for someone to argue that their costs ought to be reduced, because presumably there'd be no other party upon which to pass the differential in the cost. So while I can understand a desire to want to reduce the impact on our residents, the fact of the matter is that the impact isn't as a result of the town's involvement or not involvement. It just happened to be one of the parties that could have benefited from this particular drain, and so are picking up a portion, in any case, of the cost, because we would have been a beneficiary of it. But if had we not been, what would have been the outcome? To whom would someone go to say, gee, I didn't understand, so I don't want to pay anything beyond a particular date when I withdrew my name? So I'm a little concerned about that, just in terms of how that act operates and what its implications are when in other circumstances should something arise.
Okay.
I have
An
another
answer from-
concern, but I
answer
think I'll
from
wait
staff?
until after the amendment when we get into the major body of the discussion to talk
Okay.
about that one.
Ms. Weems, can you help the councillor in his, it is theoretical or hypothetical, but Ms. Weems?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you, the situation that Councillor Ribbiak poses is certainly an interesting one. I'm not exactly sure what would happen in a circumstance such as that, so that would be something I'd have to look
Okay.
into and get back to council with.
All right, thank you. Councillor?
Thank you. Just to understand the answer, but in any case, had we not been a petitioner, presumably we would not be asked to pick up the differential in the cost, because there would have been no cost coming to the town. That I think I understand accurately, do I not?
Ms. Weems, are you?
Mr. Mayor, through you, that's correct.
Thank you. Councillor? And then I do see Councillor Durley.
Yeah. Thank you. So I guess my concern is that because we happen to be a party to this one, we are being asked to pick up the additional cost, as opposed to somewhere in the operation of this thing, we ended up responsible for the additional cost. That's merely a comment, and I'm
Yeah.
working it.
Thank you. I
Working
think-
it in my mind.
I think it's through council resolution that we signed on to the petition, if I'm correct, Ms. Weems?
In this case,
In this particular case.
yes.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. I think it was in January of 2014.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Councillor Durley. Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This whole thing, just to put it in sequence, is my thinking. The petitioner had a problem with flooding, wanted to introduce municipal act action, or municipal drainage act action in order to solve that problem. Now, in the report, they're saying that the flooding they experienced was from irrigation water used by the nursery operation, which was next door. And it goes on to say the drainage engineer indicated that he would require written confirmation that was their intent to be removed from the petition. Now, is it a condition of the Municipal Drainage Act that written needs to be received, or is that an option?
Mr. Mayor, through you, it is a requirement under the Drainage Act that written request to withdraw your name from the petition be received. And in the Drainage Act, there are only very specific circumstances under which you can withdraw your name from a petition.
Thanks for that. Now, in reading this report, it says the drainage engineer indicated to these people that they needed to put it in writing, and they failed to do that.
That's correct. They did not write directly to the drainage engineer requesting their names be removed.
Okay, but the drainage engineer did petition them and said, you must do this in writing.
Yes, the drainage engineer did inform them of that.
All right, thank you. Any others? Councilor Juncker for a second time, then I have a question. Go ahead.
I think the confusion was, and they're not here to protect themselves, to
Answer the
explain
question.
themselves. But the confusion was that after they had thought about it, after they had signed the petition and had, I believe they had one meeting in here, as they said in their email, they didn't think that the drainage as proposed was going to solve the problem. So unfortunately, instead of writing to the drainage engineers, they did send the email to town councilors and to staff, and at that time, they were under the impression that that served as written notice. I imagine that's what happened. And unfortunately, when they had a meeting at the fire hall, somehow or other there seems to be a lot of miscommunication as to exactly what was decided there. But I'm just thinking that by sending that email, they were under the impression that the whole thing was going to be kiboshed right then and there. But that's,
Thank
that's
you.
my
So
impression.
I think that's what was stated by them during that meeting, if I recall the meeting that we held here.
Yes,
Last spring, was it?
yes, March 1st. Yep.
Thank you. And I did look back in emails, and after that meeting, I had received it. I think some other members of council had received that email from them, and I immediately sent it to the drainage superintendent so that our staff person here, and then it was sent on, I believe, to the engineer. Maybe Ms. Weens can clarify that, but
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you, the drainage superintendent did forward that email to the drainage engineer, and it was as a result of that the drainage engineer wrote that letter that's attached to the report dated May 25th, saying that he's become aware that there are people that wanted to remove their name from their petition, and that in order to do so, they need to submit it formally in writing. They then, drainage engineer then subsequently held a meeting in June, and then with all the people that were in the affected drainage area. And then after that meeting, he did come back the following week and meet directly on site with Ms. Hollingshead and Mr. Lemon. And it was after, as a result of those two meetings, that was his impression that they wanted to continue to proceed.
okay, thank you. My question goes back to the background, which is in the report. In the first line, a petition was dated May 15th, 2014, signed by several property owners on Belfour Street, was submitted to the town as a means to address flooding concerns on Belfour and on private property from flows from nearby, they thought, nearby nursery operations. The report goes on to say it was determined that the form used to sign the initial petition was incorrect, and a valid petition for municipal drain was signed by these two individuals in June of 2014. And it wasn't until January 2015 that the Director of Public Works signed it to say that it was a correct form, at the time indicated. So then they said they had to sign something else. So now they're 3 times signing something. I guess my question is, initially, there were other property owners signing this petition. What happened to those other property owners?
Mr. Mayor, yes, you're quite correct. In May 15th of 2014, there were a number of property owners that signed what they felt was the proper petition. It turned out to, or proper form, it turned out to be incorrect. And my understanding is that the drainage superintendent of the day contacted Ms. Hollinshead and Mr. Lemon and indicated that only they needed to sign this corrected form of the petition. So I don't know, and I cannot confirm, but I do not believe that the other petitioners from the original form were asked to sign. And
So, okay, only they needed to sign.
that's what I'm been told by Ms. Hollinshead and Mr. Lemon, that the former drainage superintendent advised them that he only needed signatures from them on the corrected form.
Okay, so that sheds a lot of light into this. It seems like there were a number of individuals that wanted this drain, and then our staff, he's no longer the drainage superintendent, apparently told, I don't know if other members of the, that signed that initial petition were told that, but we're hearing that from the resident that signed it, that they were the only ones that needed to sign it.
Yes, I cannot confirm what the drainage superintendent of the day may or may not have said, but that is certainly what they've indicated to me.
Okay. Colleagues, my preference, my thinking on this is that this is, I don't know, it's been miscommunication from the start. And I feel so badly for this petitioners that signed their name, even though other neighbors in the area signed it. Although I appreciate the amendment by the councilors, I personally think that I don't know, there's no way we can go on those original petitioners. And so maybe this is something that the town just needs to, I hate to say, absorb. I mean, if I was these individuals and hearing this information, I'd say, I don't have to pay, and then we're never going to get these funds back. Another couple of questions for the director. We have this report, and should there be, I hope there isn't, but should there be drainage issues in the future, can this report be used to help solve those drainage issues in the future? Can it be the basis for a drainage petition in the future?
Mr. Mayor, certainly I would think that if we were to receive another petition for a municipal drain in this area, we could use this engineer's report and the work that's been prepared to date. It may, if we get a petition in 4 or 5 years from now or 10 years from now, it may need to be updated somewhat if there's been some significant changes to kind of properties in terms of severances or that kind of thing. But the work in terms of the design of the drain certainly has been done, so a good bulk of the information could be utilized.
Okay, thank you. And in that case, again, the hypothetical, so I apologize, and you don't have to answer this if you think it's too hypothetical. But in that case, could these costs be borne by the next petitioners of the drain, or would this work be, you're saying the work could be used, but can the cost be borne by those individuals? Or maybe you don't know the answer.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, I don't know. That would, we'd
Okay.
have to get some advice on that, if we could go back and if we could apply these costs to that point in time, I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Councilors, Councilor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question and then a comment. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to our treasurer. How would we go about, if we decided to proceed with the assessment of the $13,000, how would we proceed to collect the money?
Are you able to answer that, or maybe Ms. Weens?
I'm sorry,
Quinlan?
the 13,000 that the town is now going to be paying?
No, there's an assessment, an estimated assessment of $13,000 to the petitioner.
Right.
So in fact, that's a debt owed from them to the town.
Right, so we do a drainage billing, we do a separate billing for them.
Okay, and if there's a refusal to pay?
Ms. Quinlan, do you know the answer?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay,
I haven't
Ms. Weens?
I haven't been through a drainage billing.
Okay,
Okay.
Ms. Weens?
Mr. Mayor, through you, I mean, if, at that point in time, we would sit down and negotiate, something with the property owners in terms of payment. Maybe there's a payment plan or schedule of a certain amount, on a yearly basis or something in which to do that. The cost can also be put on, it's my understanding that the cost could also be put on their tax roll. But, if we got to that point, we would certainly negotiate with them as a payment schedule or payment plan.
Okay, thank you. Counselor, you had a question, then a comment. You said.
I'll make a comment, Mr. Mayor. I would not be unhappy with the position you've taken. I'm not one to give away town money, but I think there's enough inconsistencies in the entire process from the get-go that, and even our staff report speaks of the inconsistencies. My fear is that we'd end up getting into a litigation to try and collect, or we put a lien through the tax, and to what end? I think maybe we take this as a learning experience. We develop a flow sheet whereby we bring clarity to the roles of the petitioner, the responsibility of the petitioner, et cetera, et cetera. At the time when this petition was undertaken, we had a part-time drainage superintendent that we shared with Wainfleet, I believe. And there was significant inconsistencies and lack of reporting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, as we're all aware of. So, if somebody brought that sort of amendment, I would support that in lieu of my own, that we would not collect, that we put this on the shelf. If it's ever petitioned again, we go back to this and refresh it and move forward with it on that basis.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to go to the clerk to see options. I mean, we can vote this amendment down.
Yeah.
And then another amendment can be put on. Madam
Okay.
Clerk, what are the options for council?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you can amend the amendment. A secondary amendment would be permitted to indicate that the
Okay.
petitioners not be responsible for any payment.
Okay.
I'll amend
Councilor
the
Kersey.
amendment.
Okay, thank you. And Councilor Papp will second that. Okay, to the amended amendment. Going to call the question. All those in favor? I was in favor. Opposed? Amended amendment carries. The amendment carries. And now what happens?
The
Where are
motion
we?
as amended.
The motion is amended.
The
with-
motion as amended.
Okay, so we're back with the motion as amended. Okay. So
And the amendment would be,
as you stated, the town would assume
the town would assume the cost. Yeah.
assume all, as it's in the alternative, assume all costs associated with preparing the engineer's report for the North Pelham Municipal Drain. Okay, thank you. Councilor Ribbiak, to the amended motion.
Thank you. I'd just like to make a comment with regard to the substance of the issue from the outset, which is the fact that I think it was in 2014, when we had some pretty extreme weather events. The location in question in this motion received just an inordinate amount of flooding. It was huge. It was huge. And it was one of a series, as I can recall, of events of, I guess, increasing difficulty that resulted in a discussion about what to do about that flooding. There was, at the time, amongst people who were involved, a tremendous amount of concern that the cause of the flooding was the actions of a neighbor. The Municipal Drainage Act was brought up as the means that the province had at its disposal to deal with exactly this kind of situation. And one of the virtues of that act is that it would bring expert and objective scientific knowledge to the issue to determine what the cause of the flooding was. And that would have been, I think, Mr. Mayor, the ultimate best result of the whole question, is that we would have been able to determine why the flooding was so severe at that particular location in those particular circumstances. And my concern is that somehow we need to go on, in my view, to find out what it is that creates that flooding, because I'm really concerned that if we were to experience the kinds of weather events that resulted in that flooding in the first place, we're going to have it all over again. I know that concern about operations in the area have been addressed to some extent, and the report indicates that some remedial action of some kind was taken, and apparently it has some effect, and that's really good. But I continue to fear that if we were to have other storms like those that we experienced at that time in 2014, we're going to have exactly the same circumstances again. So we're going to dispose of this motion, and it will be gone. But my hope is that somewhere in our process or in the work of the staff, we somehow can either use the information that was developed by the engineer, or that we do something about continuing the investigation into determining the cause, because I really think that there's something that needs to be done there, and that we, in disposing of this issue, are going to end up not doing what needs to be done. So that's my concern, that's my comment. I'm happy to dispose of this issue, but I'm not happy about the potential of this problem being brushed aside and lost. That's my comment.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No doubt that a breakdown in communication has caused a great misunderstanding in this particular situation. But one thing that still gets me is the fact that this action was not started by the town. This action was started by individuals. And severe weather events probably led to a knee-jerk reaction to say we need something done, and the municipal or the Drainage Act is where we should go. However, it bothers me that action started by somebody else is going to be borne by the town. That part of it really bothers me a bit, in fact, because, you know, if you started the action, and there has been communication there that this is the way you can get out of it, and it's going to cost you some money. All of these things were understood, even though there was some miscommunication. I have a problem in absorbing the whole thing just because the town didn't start this. So that's my comment.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Durley. Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our Director of Planning. As a road authority under the Drainage Act, do we not have the right to proceed on a solo campaign to create the municipal act?
Municipal drain?
Or the municipal drain? Since we have all the studies and what have you, could we not still proceed following the course of action that is outlined in the report, and that what Councilor Ribbiak alluded to, that this is probably a problem waiting to happen again. Could we, as a road authority, not proceed sort of solo, and then for the creation and maintenance of that drain, then bill the benefiting landowners? Is there an allowance for that within the Drainage Act?
Let's see if Ms. Weens has the answer.
Mr. Mayor, through you, I don't believe in this instance that we can, because we are not, you need to have the majority of the benefiting landowners, majority of land benefiting the landowners agreeing to it. And once the Lemon and Hollingshead removed their name from their petition, it wasn't able for the town, we were no longer able as the town to move forward with this process. So I don't think in this case we can.
I see.
You need 50%, is it, or?
I believe so, yes.
So we don't have enough land in the
Like
area.
that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? All right, so I'm going to call the question on the amended motion. And the motion is, as amended, be it resolved, the council receive the report and that the town assume all costs associated with preparing the engineer's report for the North Pelham Municipal Drain. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Kersey, second by Councillor Durley. Be it resolved, the council designate Christmas in Pelham outdoor Christmas market to be held on Friday, December 1st, 2017, under the arches as a municipally significant event, and that the clerk be authorized to make application for a special occasions permit for Christmas in Pelham outdoor Christmas market, and further that council authorize the following road closure: Pelham Town Square entrance at Pelham Street to 55 meters east of Pelham Street from 12 p.m., that is noon, to 12 a.m. on Friday, that is midnight, on Friday, December 1st, 2017. Questions or comments? Looks like a great program planned. Thank you for staff for continuing with this. We look for, I think we're looking for vendors for that, so certainly encourage folks to contact the town. Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries, and hopefully it won't be another shiver fest, I think is what Councillor Kersey has called it in the past.
Councillor Durley labeled
Oh, I'm
that.
sorry, it was Councillor Durley.
Yes, we've perpetuated the myth.
Thank you. Now we move to presentation consideration of bylaws. It's been moved by Councillor Kersey, second by Councillor King. Be it resolved, the council of the town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do now read a first, second, and third time and do pass the same, and that the mayor and clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaws. Bylaw 3928, 2017, being a bylaw to declare the town-owned lands described in Schedules A and B attached to and forming part of the bylaw surplus to the needs of the municipality and therefore available for disposition. And those are East Fonthill lands. Councillor Kersey, I know you had some questions about this. I'm going to turn to you, sir, first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, when I read this bylaw and I look at the Schedules A and B, the relationship between Schedule A, which is a legal description, and Schedule B, which is really a sketch, in my view, make it difficult for the public to understand how the two relate and how it relates to what's in the bylaw. It seems to me that there should be, at the very least, the art plan should be listed, should be shown here, so that the description is very clear on, and is related to the art plan as opposed to a sketch. Because when I read the bylaw, I don't really understand the legal description. I don't really understand how that we've designated blocks A, B, and C for sale and as residual land. So,
Okay.
that was my question, and it was more for clarity for the public. I understand what we're doing, but I want public to understand.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's ask the clerk for some clarity, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. It was done this way. The legal description is what would be included or what was included on the agreement of purchase and sale. That is the legal agreement. There are a number of reference plans involved in that description, there's 59R14225 and 59R12687. There are some various easements running through the land. So that is a legal description and can sometimes be very confusing. So we wanted to simplify that both for the public notice advertisement in the paper and for the purposes of describing the lands, while also recognizing that a portion of the land shown as Block A on Schedule B is subject to an option. So we were trying to give both the legal description as well as a simplified drawing as opposed to the reference plans, which can be very confusing because they have 7, 8, 10 parts to them. I did review, after hearing that you had some concerns, I did review paragraph 1 and would suggest that the addition simply of the word "and," so that it would read that the lands described in Schedule A and as depicted on Schedule B are hereby declared surplus. That might provide some clarity. Should members of the public have any questions, we would be happy to provide them with any of the extra drawings.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Counselor?
Should we not refer to the blocks that are for sale, like Block A, B, and C are the sale pieces within the bylaw, as opposed to, we're using A and B and Schedule A and B, if or we put a legend on the sketch indicating lands to be sold,
There's no,
blocks A, B, and C.
there's no legend on the sketch, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, when we do receive offers to purchase, there will be further bylaws that come forward. As council is aware, they may be sold either as full parcels or they may be further subdivided, and at that point we would have reference plans that would be used in the actual sale bylaws. This bylaw to declare the lands as surplus gives more of a broad description of what is being declared surplus and offered for sale. The actual sale bylaws would have reference plans attached to them so that it's very specific as to what is being sold to what party, if that brings any further clarity.
Yeah, I think, if I might, Counselor, are you suggesting, I don't know if it's an amendment, but some clarity, and maybe it's under that first item, number 1, that the lands described in Schedule A, so that's a legal description, and it's words, and as depicted on Schedule B, maybe it needs to say there, including A, B, and C as blocks A, B, and C. Would that clarify it?
That would satisfy the need for clarity.
Or including, or as
Shown as blocks,
shown as blocks?
A, B, and C.
Right, so that it's right here.
I see.
So how should we take that as an amendment, Madam Clerk?
Yes, you could pass that as amended, and I'll make sure that the one that gets signed is amended properly.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Durley, will you second that?
Sure.
Okay. Anything further to that, to describe it? And then cognizant that there's also adding of the word "and," so that it will read that the lands described in Schedule A and as depicted on Schedule B, and what wording did you use?
Shown as blocks A, B, and C.
Shown as blocks A, B, and C are hereby declared surplus.
Right.
Okay, anything further to that amendment? Counselor Durley?
Not to that amendment per se, but just a point of clarity. You're looking at the west side of Rice Road and the eastern border of blocks A, B, and C. There tends to be a space there. What is that?
Good point. Good
Is
question.
that a holding?
Oh, the clerk says she can address that, and Ms. Weens can address that as well. Madam Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's actually one of the reasons why we avoided all of the reference plans, because that is a road widening that was dedicated to the town of Pelham.
To the town of Pelham, or to the town?
Sorry, to the region
To the region.
previously.
Okay, that answers, thank you, that's good.
Okay, great, thank you. So to the amendment, really a clarity amendment. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That amendment carries unanimously. Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Okay, I'm going to call the question to the bylaw as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries as amended. Thank you. And thanks for the clarity, Madam Clerk. We don't have any notices of motion or matters for committee or resolutions to move in closed session, so it has been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Durley. Be it resolved that the following bylaw be read a first, second, and third time and passed, being bylaw 3929, 2017, to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of council of the town of Pelham at its regular meeting held on the 16th day of October, 2017. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. And finally, it's been moved by Councillor Ribbiak, second by Councillor King. Be it resolved this regular meeting of council be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for November 6, 2017 at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. This meeting is adjourned. We'll take a brief break before we start committee. Thank you.